Hi, I'm Nicole Ringgold. I'm gonna be honest, I feel really sad these days about what's happening in our country, what's happening between our country and the rest of the world, what's happening with silver prices, and I've just been kind of at my wit's end wondering whether or not even posting my own work is important given what's happening around us. So I feel a little bit better when I offer some help to those of us who are trying to pinch pennies by offering these tutorials on how to use your recycled silver, your silver scraps. So this is going to be my second tutorial on how to take your sterling silver scraps and turn them into something else. This time it's going to be a ring shank, and there's no need for a crucible, a rolling mill. It's really just a torch, a hammer, a ring mandrel, and sandpaper, and a little bit of solder. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I think also for those of you who are on my Patreon channel, I'm going to be showing you how to take scraps and carve out a skull. So that will be coming up here in the next weekish. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and good luck to you. I feel it. I'm feeling it with you. Okay. Bye. In my last tutorial, I showed you how to take silver scraps and turn them into the back plate for a bezel setting. This time, I'm going to show you how to make the ring shank. As you can see, I'm starting with sterling silver scrap all lined up on my soldering platform. This is SILQUAR soldering platform that you can get through Amazon or on Rio Grande. I'm using my Little Smith oxygen propane torch, and right now all I'm doing is melting all of the smaller side components of each of the scraps, making sure that they're touching and fusing them inward to create one long line of silver blob. It'll be a lot easier for me to work with when it's one long line rather than stretched out like it is. And as you can see, I just moved it from one place on my platform to another. That ensures that it's not sticking to the platform, because as soon as you get some platform stuck into it, it's going to interrupt your fusing process and you're going to have to carve it out or clean it out. Once you have it in a line, you can use the heat of your torch to move the metal around. So here you can see I'm drawing it inward. I'm changing the angle of my torch. I'm moving it from the side and now working the other side. I'm not only heating the top, because otherwise the metal will pancake outward. If I have a spot that has less mass, less silver, I can nudge it together as I'm heating, and then I can return to where there might be more silver, heat it until it becomes molten, and then it will follow the heat of my torch. Here I'm creating a little bit more of a mass, and I can heat it and move it. It will follow my torch like that. You must wait until your silver is molten in order for that to happen. Just like with the last tutorial, be sure that there is no fine silver in this mix. You want it to only be sterling silver, because the fine silver will come raised to the surface and it will interrupt this whole fusing process. Fine silver tends to puddle outward rather than build upward sculpturally like sterling silver does. And right now what I'm doing is simply moving the metal around to ensure that the entire piece of metal is relatively the same mass all the way from one side to the other. Here's another technique that's pretty cool. There's a mass. I'm going to heat that, and with my tweezers, I'm going to pull one end of my silver. I'm going to stretch it apart. So now I've created a little bit of a smaller piece there, and I can use my torch to move the mass back into it. Again, watch, I'm turning it. As soon as it becomes molten, it follows my torch. Reminder to move it every so often so it does not stick to your platform. This end is a little cattywampus, so I can heat it and use my pick or tweezers to bend it so it's straight now. I can place my pick at one end so that if I don't want to lose the length, I can put my pick there. It's a heat sink, and now move some of that mass outward without fearing that it will ball up on one side. What I mean by that is if you don't put your pick at the end to act as a heat sink, the metal might ball and pull inward and become more of a blob rather than elongate. Now that the gauge of the silver or the mass of the silver is relatively even all the way from one side to the other, I'm going to roll it over and heat the backside. And to do so, I'm paying attention to the angle of my torch. I'm not putting it straight down. I'm going across the surface, and that will cause that spot that's all the way across the bottom to lift up and round out. I'm not pointing straight down at it because, again, that will cause my silver to pancake. I'm going across the surface, intentionally not wanting to heat it all the way through to the bottom, the metal that is flush with the platform. I'm going across the surface to round it out. Now I'm pretty happy with it, so I'm going to let it cool to room temperature, and then I'm going to anneal it. I think of annealing in terms of boiling water. I don't want to boil my silver so that it just churns about, because I think of that as work hardening. Annealing is a softer temperature, meaning more propane than oxygen. And what you're doing is letting your silver simmer. You're letting that fine silver rise to the surface, allowing the silver to soften. I say all of that, but please note, I am not a scientist. In any case, once it's annealed, take a heavy hammer and hammer your metal on the top, the bottom, and the sides on your anvil or some kind of steel plate or a steel bench block. Hammer it until you can tell that your piece is starting to work harden once again. And from there, you will want to anneal your piece. Of course, if you have a rolling mill, you can use that, but I have not found the need for it when you use these particular techniques. Ensure that you're hammering consistently from one end to the other. Turn it over, repeat the process, and then turn it on its sides and hammer the sides without hammering so hard that you're actually buckling the metal. If you really want to understand the colors of silver, you can pickle after annealing, which will turn your silver white. And then as you're hammering and you're work hardening your piece, your silver will become more gray or the silver color that it was when you received it in its package from the wholesale supply company. But generally, you should be able to tell when your silver is no longer responding to your hammering because it's hard. All right, so that looks pretty good to me. I want it to be a little bit thinner, so I am going to anneal it, and I'm going to come back and repeat this process one more time. Come back, use the heavy hammer, consistently hammer from one side to the other, turning it over, hammering from one side to the other, and then tilting it on its side, hammering consistently without buckling that silver. You may decide that you love the look of the marred metal from your hammering process. If not, don't worry about it. I'll show you in a future step how to get rid of all of that. From here, you'll measure the size of your ring and then saw it accordingly. And I'm going to be using a 2/0 saw blade to get through this metal. You'll want to anneal it one more time before forming it into the ring over the mandrel. Here, I'm using a nylon hammer to form it over the mandrel, and I'm hammering it until it is actually a full circle and the sides that I sawed are flush. If you're worried about your fingerprints and dirt all over it, you might want to just throw it in the pickle a little bit, but otherwise you can move forward. Flux, I use Mighty Flux, and then I'm going to use hard solder to solder the seam. Of course, you don't need to use hard solder if there are no other solder joints that you anticipate, but I'm probably going to add a bezel setting of some sort to this or something. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm leaving myself room for just in case scenarios. I like to pick solder whenever possible. heat your solder, not your pick. I'm heating the entire mass, and then I'm putting the solder at the top, going back and forth over the seam to draw the solder down into that seam. Use various grits of sandpaper to sand down your ring until you're happy with it. And then on my flex shaft, I'm going to use a coarse fiber wheel. This I get through Rio Grande to get to the inside, the outside, and this gives it a nice brushed appearance. And really, that's it. After this, I just wash it with soap and water. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions, comments. I do plan on incorporating more of these types of tutorials here on my YouTube channel, as well as in my in-person workshops. I do know that quite a few of my students who've taken workshops with me in the past are worried about the cost of silver. So my hope is to plan around that and help as much as I can. Do reach out if you have questions. My heart, my thoughts are with you. Thank you.